All right. Well, hello and welcome to this Thrive Today webinar entitled Going Beyond Gratitude. My name is Christy Harang, and as part of the Thrive Today team, we are so glad that you are here together with us for this time, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on recording. Now, Thrive Today teaches and trains people in relational skills. And what's really cool is that as we practice and develop these skills, we start to develop more joy and peace in our lives. We have a better ability to have strong and healthy connections with the people that we interact with. And so we have been in a series called the Foundational Five, and we've been looking at the five most foundational of the skills that all the other skills build upon. And one of those foundational skills is appreciation, which we're talking about today. So we're going to be taking a look at what this skill is, how it has the power to really impact our lives, and also just a couple strategies or steps that you can take to start building more appreciation in your life today. So joining us for this conversation is our president, Chris Coursey. Chris and his wife, Jen, are the co-founders of Thrive Today. They have two beautiful boys. And for over 25 years, Chris has been studying cutting edge brain science and then taking what he's learned in order to come up with strategies and practices that we can implement to have healthier and stronger relationships. He's also an author and has written 10 books, including The Joy Switch, which was released this year. So Chris, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this discussion with you today.
Hey, thank you, Christy. I'm excited for our time here, and this is going to be so fun talking about appreciation.
Yeah, we've got really good time in store, and we always enjoy having these conversations. We were just talking about like all these skills are so fun to talk about. So I just want to mention before we get going that we are recording this. So you want to be sure you're registered for this webinar if you want to receive the recording. And if you are on Facebook Live, I want to mention we're going to have a Q&A at the end of our discussion, but you actually have to be on Zoom with us to be part of that Q&A. And so I have the link to register and get the Zoom link. If you want to jump into Zoom, you are welcome to do that. We would love to have you on with us for the Q&A portion. So you can write questions in now, or not now, you probably don't have questions yet, we haven't started, but you can write questions in as we get going. We will get to as many as we can at the end of our time together. All righty, so Chris, I wanted to ask you to start by unpacking appreciation, but with a little bit of context, because our culture actually talks quite a bit now about like gratitude and thankfulness, positive thinking. So I was hoping you could unpack appreciation, but also in that share how it might differ a little bit from some of these concepts we hear a lot about.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. So, it's very exciting to talk about this particular skill, appreciation, because you're right. There's a lot of confusion in our world about what is appreciation. What does it look like? What's happening in the brain and the nervous system? So appreciation is actually a very specific, what we call relational brain skills. So these are skills that we learn often early in life because people who have the skill will use the skill as they interact with us. So we learn appreciation primarily because we are around people who know how to practice appreciation. So appreciation is a different branch on the tree here of gratitude. It's connected, but they're actually a bit different in some ways. So gratitude is, I'm focusing on the things that I'm grateful for. I'm thankful for today. So I would say, here's what I'm thankful for today. We get to spend some time with our friends talking about relational skills. I'm very thankful for that. So with gratitude, it's a good skill. In fact, there's overlap with appreciation because they do many of the similar things, but there are some differences. Appreciation would be the purposeful activation of positive memories. So what that means is I'm intentionally practicing remembering joyful, positive moments in my life. For example, when this webinar is done, I can I can practice gratitude now, and I can practice appreciation afterwards by reflecting back on this webinar, what was fun, what was meaningful for me, or what was special, thinking about some of the joy that popped up. So appreciation is this, I am purposefully remembering, recollecting those special moments of joy and peace. So we could say these are like opening up God's gifts. So if you think about Christmas morning is always an exciting morning. People are very excited about, being able to share gifts, give gifts, as well as receive gifts. So appreciation is, in a sense, unwrapping God's gifts in our lives. So just this morning I drove my sons to school. One of our habits is to think about appreciation memories and share those. So they remember, oftentimes within the last 24 hours, we will remember something. So it was fun today. I was driving them. I said, well, later today, Daddy's doing an appreciation webinar talking about appreciation. And so, I gave them, I prepared them for something that was going to happen today. And I said, when you get home from school, I will share with you how that went and we'll talk about it. So then the appreciation is remembering what was special, what was meaningful. Sometimes it might be a beautiful sunset that we feel like God painted in the sky just for us, where I shared it. Maybe I felt God's face just shining on me. I shared it with my family. It was just a special moment. And when I reflect on those special moments, what happens is my brain responds as though I'm reliving that moment all over again. That's the beauty, Christy, of what we're going to talk about today. Just, when the Bible says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, we see some of that when we think about how the brain works with appreciation. So if you were to scan my brain when I'm going through the special moment of being with my friends today, and then later on, maybe tonight, I reflect back on that moment. What you'd see is my brain scans would match when that memory package is opened with appreciation. So I get the feel-good chemicals, as I'm going through this, but when I reflect back on it later, guess what? All these feel-good chemicals and places in my brain light up again as I'm remembering it. And that's exciting news, because this is a skill we all can practice. All too often, we just need a little bit of practice, Christy, to make it happen.
No, I love that because, well, I love what you said. It's a purposeful activation of positive memories. And I think, when I think about there's a lot of talk about gratitude journals and stuff, I can make a list of stuff that I'm thankful for, but that can be a very left brain logical thing. But if I'm actually trying to bring activation, I'm trying to remember what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, then we're turning on that right side, right? That relational part of our brain. It's a whole brain experience. And that's when we start to actually see transformations start to happen in the wiring of our brains.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. So you're exactly right. When we remember that, we're engaging this relational side of our brain. And so what's interesting is if my brain's relational circuits are off, I can't feel appreciation. However, I could start the engine by activating those appreciation memories, which will help this engine to light up. And so when I'm thinking and remembering it, so I'm remembering, I'm feeling it, and even sharing it eventually, what happens is this relational brain of mine, this relational circuit comes online. And now I feel present, I feel anchored in the moment, and I'm able to share it with my people. So when I'm practicing appreciation with my sons, sometimes they're just in a hurry because they want to do whatever they want to do. So it's like, we got to practice appreciation. But an interesting thing happens. At first they will just randomly just come up with some things. It's like their left hemisphere just comes up with some ideas that should appease daddy so we can go, do whatever we want to do. But when they actually start practicing it, or they hear mine, it's amazing to see their right brain as they start to think about it and feel it and then share the moment. You can watch their body language and see the difference from, I'm in a hurry, let's just do this to get it done so I can go play, to, oh, wait a minute, this is actually really cool. I'm smiling, I'm engaged, I'm actually enjoying the moment. And that, Christy, is what makes this skill a game changer This practicing this skill regularly will not only help you live more relationally, but it will give you more capacity to stay the best version of yourselves no matter what's going on.
No, that's incredible. I find the same thing with my boys too. Like I have them do journaling of appreciation stuff, and they'll just try to run through it, and then I stop, ask them some questions so that they can dive a little deeper into it. And yeah, you do see the difference when they start actually getting in the moment. So you started getting ahead of us, which is perfect, perfect segue. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the benefits. So you started a little bit, but can you talk more about what we're going to notice in our lives when appreciation is alive and a habit?
Yeah, you know what? When we notice God's gifts in our lives, we become a thankful bunch. So what that means is actually gratitude can become a quality of our character. So we start to be known by being a very thankful, joyful, peaceful person. In the Old Testament, there was an offering that the Israelites could bring to God in the temple, and that was what's known as the peace offering or the fellowship offering. And it basically was one of the reasons for this is we're excited about something that God did in our lives, and we want to go and share that and basically say, thank you, God, for that gift that you gave me. And so that was an offering that the Israelites could share in the enjoyment of giving that to God, and even having, basically it's like having a meal with God. So as we practice appreciation, we become a thankful bunch. We become the type of people who are looking for good things, even in the midst of hardship, which is what makes this a very fascinating skill. So even in the midst of hard things, when we are practicing appreciation, what it does is it basically trains your brain to scan the environment, looking for good things that you can savor and enjoy and even feel some gratitude over. So when appreciation is just not a skill or a habit I've quite learned yet, then my brain still scans the environment, but it's scanning for something that's wrong. So what can I be critical over or even judgmental over? Because lack of appreciation kind of leaves me anchored in the brain's version of enemy mode. And in enemy mode, I'm looking for problems, and and my energy goes into the problems over relationships. I just want to win when there's interactions, and my brain is just looking for the things what's upsetting around here. So the brain that's trained on appreciation is basically scanning the environment for what's good. When I'm not trained on appreciation, I'm scanning the environment for what's wrong, what's bad, what do I need to be upset over, what should I complain about here. So two completely different systems here in the brain of what's running when we're either using appreciation or when we're not. So using appreciation not only helps to keep us relational no matter what's going on, it also helps us expect joy. So when you think about those moments, even in the past 24 hours, you're remembering those special moments, you reflect on those, you start to feel some of that. And even if you tell a story of that, what happens is you're training your brain to expect the good stuff. So even if things are going wrong, I'm in a hurry to get to work and there's a traffic jam or an accident, I'm stuck, I'm going to be late. So appreciation would say, this is really hard, but what can I enjoy even while I navigate this? And so it in a sense, it's like a relational life preserver. So appreciation also not only keeps us anchored, but it gives us strength to navigate the hard stuff. So when I am going through hardship, what happens is I have a better charged relational battery. So that means I can more stay myself when things go wrong. I don't get stuck in my anger or my fear or my rage, whatever it is going on. So appreciation is like our lifeline. So it keeps us connected and it gives us strength to suffer well. And what it does is it primes us for connecting with the living God. So because appreciation is just enjoying God's gifts, what it does is it prepares our brain to interact with the gift giver. So that's the beauty of appreciation, is in a sense, it's that bridge to connecting with Jesus and God's presence and having a sense as to what is God doing here as it relates to me. We call that the Emmanuel lifestyle. And so if as a pastor, if I want to help anyone just have a sense of God's peace or God's presence, no matter what's going on in their lives, one of the things that I'm going to try to help them with is to think about some of God's gifts in their lives. And when we open those presents, your brain starts to basically be primed for then interacting with the gift giver, the king, and enjoying the Prince of Peace and enjoying his peace. So this is the gift that just keeps on giving, Christy. It really is just one of those skills. When we use it, we can't help but share it. It will be a natural part of our interactions, our conversations. I've been in airports, stressful situations, trying to catch flights, and even waiting in line, noticing I'm interacting with someone and I'm sharing appreciation moments from, maybe something recently that happened, even though everybody's frustrated because, we're all worked up because we're trying to get to our destination. When the skill is there, it will show up. You can't help but use it if you practice this skill. And that's good news for all of us today.
Yeah, very good news. And I think what I've heard you and Jen say about appreciation that really well captures everything you've shared is that it leads to greater levels of satisfaction in life. Yeah. Because when we can navigate the hard things and we can stay relational and, we can connect with Jesus, all of these things, we're going to actually enjoy our life more. So
yes,
who doesn't want that?
It's a win-win. I mean, we
Yeah.
will. And that's an important point, especially for parents or grandparents or teachers, like you help children. Now we benefit, but also we empower people to learn what's satisfying and what's not satisfying, which is an important skill that helps us in our maturity. So I find this is a regular practice we try to practice in our home, especially over meals or, like I said, going to school. Even in the hard days, we validate our sons when things are hard. We go, wow, that sounds really hard. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. So we validate, but then we'll invite them, say, well, was there anything good that happened around that? Was there anything that you're thankful for, even though that was miserable? Did anything else, happen today that was actually helpful? So we learn to, we acknowledge the hard stuff because hard stuff is going to happen. It will continue to happen. The Bible tells us don't be surprised when it happens because it's going to show up on our doorsteps. But appreciation is what helps God's children be a thankful bunch that reflect Jesus's character, but also have this living relationship with Emmanuel. And appreciation is really the foundation for that house. And it's a skill that we can practice no matter whether our family had this or not. Today, starting today, this can be a skill that we use. And frankly, when I learned the science behind appreciation, when Jen and I were early married, I had all the great theory about appreciation, but it quickly became apparent in our marriage where Jen was having a hard time sleeping. And I said, well, let's try an exercise, because I've been, studying appreciation and even working with Dr. Jim Wilder on creating exercises. I said, let's try an activity here. Let's reflect on, 3 things from our day that were special moments, and let's talk about those. And then, some qualities that we appreciate about each other, and then some qualities we appreciate about God and his character. And Chrissy, this exercise would take about 10 minutes. I've talked on this before, but a 10-minute exercise where Jen would be up oftentimes for hours at night. I'm a light sleeper, which meant I was up for hours. 10 minutes of appreciation transformed our marriage because we started to sleep better, but it started to be a practice that we would do because over time, your brain just gets used to doing this. And you'll actually start craving appreciation when it becomes a habit. And you can't help but share it when this is part of your character and this is part of your relational skill set. So good news.
It is. Yeah, it's really, it's inspiring because, again, I think these are things that we are all wanting. And so let's take a look at what are some signs, Chris, that I or some of our viewers might not have appreciation as established of a habit, or even like in seasons, because I'm thinking there's seasons where appreciation is kind of alive and active and other seasons where it's kind of dwindling. So what might be some signs that our appreciation levels are a little low and that we could use some investment in this skill?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one of the clearest ways we know we need a little more appreciation in our life is when we don't have peace. So we might notice we're grumpy. We just feel bogged down. We feel overwhelmed. We find that we're thinking about things that upset us rather than thinking about things that calm us. So one of the clearest signs that we need appreciation is when my mind ruminates on the things that bother me, scare me, annoy me, hurt me. You name it. Anything that robs my joy, your brain's an amplifier. So it's either going to amplify the things that upset you and the negative stuff, or it's going to amplify the good stuff, your joy, and so forth. So I know my appreciation levels are getting dangerously low when I've lost my peace. I'm thinking about the things that bother me. And I'm even become critical toward other people. So I can tell I'm a little low on appreciation, maybe when I'm critical with my sons. Maybe I'm just becoming bossy. I'm focusing on things they didn't do, or things they were supposed to do, or the things that just bother me. And what happens in your brain is when the hard stuff files, the negative stuff is loaded, it will come out. It inevitably is going to come out. So I can also see that I'm not bringing others joy when my appreciation tank is a little too low. So lost my peace, I'm critical, and I'm probably blasting or amplifying the negative stuff. And here's the good news. So recognizing that those things are happening doesn't mean that I'm stuck with that. Um, but one of the worst things to happen is not only when we do that relationally, when we're kind of growing the negative stuff instead of the good stuff, but when you're trying to rest and your brain wants to focus on the things that bother you, especially at night when you want to go to sleep, you're tired, you've got an early morning, and your mind just wants to focus on the things that bother, hurt, frustrate, annoy you, and so forth. That's miserable. And so what I encourage people to do is that's a good sign we need to practice some appreciation. So if I'm interacting with people that are very critical, again, we validate, well, that sounds really hard. Well, is there anything good? Has anything special happened to you in recent days? Has any joyful moments happened for you? Like, so we can recognize it in ourselves. We can recognize it in other people. And then we can actually try to turn the steering wheel to focus on appreciation. But you just lose your peace, and you just find that your brain's kind of caught in enemy mode. And you're just spinning your wheels in the mud. And so when I find that I'm doing that, I know a couple things. One, I know that I need to spend a little time with the Lord and quieting and interacting with the Lord and sharing my gratitude and appreciation with him, and then, getting some of God's peace. But then I also know with my children, I will basically help them interpret it, like, or my friends. I've been really grumpy lately. I'm really sorry if that's, come out and affected you. I've just been having a tough time, and I'm realizing I have to take better care of myself. So because this is a brain skill, it means that this is a need. So this isn't a luxury item on the menu. This is actually something we all need. Your brain, your relationships, your life, and your health need this. Like, even down to our cells change, as scientists are starting to discover. When you think about the good things, enzymes in your body, even into your cells, are impacted by that. So your immune systems, your heart, like your blood pressure, all kinds of things will improve when you start thinking about the good stuff and opening some of these joy files. It's going to change you. It's going to change your character. It's going to change your relationships. But it's not fun when the joy tank starts to run out of gas. It just means it's time to pull over and fill up again.
Oh, that's really good. And I'll be honest, like, I've been noticing myself feeling really frustrated. I mean, I think that's another sign, like getting snippy and snappy with my kids, feeling more frustrated with things that wouldn't normally frustrate me. And so that's been like a sign for me. Okay, I've got to, it's time to put my focus and my intention on some of the things that I'm grateful for, and shifting that, or, shifting what I'm focusing on. And another thing I think that Jen mentions a lot is that when we're stuck in, when we're lacking appreciation, we can get rigid with our thinking. So we're not very flexible. It's kind of like, no, it has to be this way. There's less of our ability to adapt and flow with things. So,
Yeah, you're
but like
exactly
Chris
right.
said, there's hope, right? We're not stuck here. Those are just signs, that, and so now we want to talk about, I'm sorry, Chris, I kind of interrupted you. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm with you. And I just want to affirm, I think all of us, Christy, can relate to that, where the tank is low, we're shorter, snappier, like are just, yeah, those are all signs that we just need to refuel. And honestly, that can happen daily or weekly. We can have seasons where the tank is full, seasons where it's empty. But as you said, just even recognizing that is a pretty important skill right there.
Yeah. And so, hitting on what I was also just saying and what you said, that we're not stuck here. So let's talk a little bit about what are some steps that we can start taking to begin developing appreciation.
Yeah. So let's keep in mind with appreciation, the sequence is I remember it, I feel it, and then I share it. And so I'm purposeful about recalling the positive things. So this could have, it could be a very hard day. I could be struggling with a lot of different things in my life. It is the purposeful pausing to reflect back. Yeah, I had 10 hard things happen today, but you know what were some of the good things? Or even recently, what are some of God's gifts? What were some special moments? I've noticed, for example, I have this fun little thing with God that I love birds and I love cardinals. They're just these, beautiful birds. And a lot of the times I'm looking out the window, maybe I'm praying or I'm just thinking, or I'm just struggling with a problem or something. And I'll see a little cardinal fly into one of our trees in our yard. And just that little precious bird is just such a reminder of God's goodness and God's gifts for me. So I can notice that and I can reflect on that and I can feel that. And then I could even share that. So it is the very purposeful reflection and intentional, thinking and remembering what are some of those gifts, those joy packages in your life. All right. So then I'm going to notice, how does it feel? So the noticing how it feels is part of what trains this relational brain, the front of the right side of the brain, what we know as the prefrontal cortex or PFC and a lot of the science. What it does when you notice, this is part of the brain that's involved in the body. So when you scan your body and you notice, how does it feel as I remember God's gifts? What it's doing is, one, it's helping your brain make these connections and make these associations between, remembering the good stuff means I feel better, I feel more peaceful, I feel calmer, I feel refreshed. And so what it's also doing with your brain and your body is it's helping you notice when you lose your peace. So I'm stressed, my heart's racing, I'm feeling tense or overwhelmed. Then my brain says, hey, wait a minute, I need that peaceful feeling right now because I've lost it. So I like to ask people often, hey, what does it feel like when you remember that gift? What's happening in your body if I were in your shoes? So that's actually training your brain to make this a habit, and it's training your brain's barometer to notice, how am I doing here? But then when you share the story, you make it, I make it I make the effort to tell the story, to share, like, not only did I see that cardinal, but I can remember that's a gift that God's given me before in the past. Here's how it felt. And here's what happened as I started to notice that. So you share the story, which is, again, training your brain to expect good things and God's gifts and God's presence around the corner. So we want to share the story. Again, it's still good if you just remember it and feel it. That's great. But if you want to make this a habit that you spread relationally, tell that story. Even if it's a 30-second story, just share the story. Not only does it prime your listeners for appreciation, but it's training you to reflect, remember, feel, and share the good stuff. So these are all ways that this particular relational skill will spread into our families, into our communities. I've got family members now, they've come to expect when they interact with me that we're going to talk about some of God's gifts and some of just the good stuff that's going on in the life. We'll affirm and validate the hard stuff, but we're also going to try to focus and amplify on some of the good stuff as well, which gives us strength to navigate the hard stuff.
I really love that. And as you're talking, it feels like it takes it from like a one-dimensional experience of just thinking, oh yeah, I had a nice walk the other day, to like this 3D experience, where I'm experiencing it, I'm feeling it, and then I'm sharing it. It becomes this bigger, fuller experience. And I know one of the things we do, we share a lot of appreciation at the dinner table. You guys probably do too. That's a great way to do it because we're going to have dinner together anyway. So it's a habit we already have in place. And it's easier to add a habit when you already have a habit established, like when you link it with an established habit. So we do appreciation at the table. But then oftentimes if someone just shares something and it's kind of one-dimensional left brain, then we'll ask the question, well, how did that feel? What are some emotions you felt during that experience? And so that's a great way to invite people to experience it more, to build appreciation. And then we get to all enjoy it. As we hear them share, then I find myself feeling appreciative as I engage in their experience, and we can actually play off of each other's appreciations, which is pretty fun.
That for a family to do what you just shared, Christy, is really like the difference, the impact that will make in the joy levels and the peace levels in a home is wonderful. There's times even on the way to school, sometimes if I can tell my relational brain is offline, I might say, hey guys, you know what? Daddy needs a little appreciation today. Let's do some appreciation for a few minutes. And then we'll go from there. And you know what? When we have the language as the kinds of things that you mentioned there, Christy, like when your family has this language, we learn to recognize, you know what? I think we need some appreciation here. Let's practice this skill. And that's exactly what we're after there, because that's how it becomes a habit. And that's how we really help people be the best version of themselves when appreciation is present. And what's really cool is appreciation primes us for God's peace and God's presence. So all too often, as a pastoral counselor, a lot of people who really want to feel close to God, but for whatever reasons, they just feel like God's distant or whatever it is. And appreciation is often one of the most common reasons why, for people, they have a hard time feeling close with God and feeling God's peace or God's joy or God's presence. So we don't try to force the connection. What I'll actually do is have people practice what you just mentioned, Christy, which is let's grow some of the good stuff. Let's feel some appreciation. And then when we feel some of that peace and that joy and we feel kind of relationally online, now let's ask Jesus if there's anything on his mind that he'd like to share with us. So that is transformative. I mean, I try to share that as often as possible. Like, don't try to force that connection with God. Actually, just improve your ability to practice appreciation. That's the primer of being able to enjoy God's peace and God's presence.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to do Q&A in just a minute. Again, if you happen to be on Facebook Live and you're live with us, the link to join us on Zoom is in the description of the Facebook Live. So just click on that, register, and you'll get the link. So if you want to hop on with us, you can do that. And we're just going to share some next steps for you of resources and things you can do to begin developing appreciation in your life. The first thing is that we're following up this conversation with an event on June 11th. We're wiring my brain with appreciation. So we're going to be touching on the things that we're talking about now, but going deeper into the theory. So we'll learn more about the theory behind appreciation, what it really is, and how it actually has the potential to change your levels of satisfaction. So we touched on it, but we're going to go deeper into that. We're going to talk about some of the triggers that can keep us stuck in these cycles of like negative and rigid thinking, and then tips for how we can find appreciation even in those tougher times. And then we're going to talk about learning how the brain rewiring process works and how you can increase your capacity to navigate the ups and downs of life with appreciation. So this will be a really fun event. I'll be hosting, Chris will be bringing some amazing content, and we'll have an exercise at the end of each of our 3 sessions so that you can begin practicing appreciation with us. You can register, the link is there below, and I'm going to put the links in the chat box in just a minute. And then let's see here. I want to mention, as I already had said, this is part of a series called the Foundational 5. So if you want to learn more about our Foundational 5 resources, you can go to thrivetoday.org/foundational5. At the time that we're recording this, because I realize people will be watching this down the road, but at the time of the recording, we have resources available for Skill 0, which is our relational circuit. So we have a free webinar, and then we have a theory online course, and then we have several additional practice online courses. There's a lot of resources up for that. For skills 1 and 2, which we've already done free webinars on, we are still in the process of getting our additional resources up, but you can access the webinars for those. And then you can also sign up if you want to get more information as the resources come out. And then also, if you haven't already taken our free joy assessment, you can go to thrivetoday.org/joy switch and take our free joy assessment. And so Chris's book, which I'm going to share with you in just a second, The Joy Switch, this is the foundation. We hit on it a little bit, but getting our relational circuits on, turning on our joy switch, that is the foundation really for everything else that we're talking about. And so this will just help you take a little assessment to see where you're at. And then if you want to learn more about the Joy Switch, you can get Chris's book at thrivetoday.org/our works. And I highly recommend this if you don't have it, because like I said, it really is the foundation of everything else that we're talking about. So let me just put these resource links in. And you'll also receive an email if you registered with all of this information. So with that, we're going to head into Q&A. And if you have been joining us on Facebook, we really thank you for being with us. All right. So Chris, let me take a look at our questions. Sorry, just a second. This was kind of, let's see. Oh, this is a great question. I don't feel anything when I remember the gratitude, appreciation memory. Am I doing something wrong?
Yeah, you know what? You're not doing anything wrong at all. What that means basically is you just need a little more practice. And you know what? I find for some people, when they're just like first starting this, it helps to practice with other people. If you know any friends who are really good at this, they just seem to naturally exude it and do these kinds of things. Have someone practice with you. Like, it actually helps your brain to look at someone outside of you as they practice it, and you see the difference it makes for them. You see their face light up, you see them come online, your brain registers, your brain responds. So, you know, practice with other people, notice what happens. The key here, or even start a journal. You know, what you want to do is you just need a little more purposefulness to reflect, think about the moment. How does it feel? What's happening in your body from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? You know, notice the effects. And again, if you can share the story, again, if you're journaling, you can write it out. You can even tell Jesus what you enjoy and what you're thankful for. But ideally, you also want to share it with your community. So just practice. And what I would have you do if I was with you is I would just have you, hey, what does it feel like in your shoulders when you do that? What does it feel like in your stomach and your belly and your back and in your head and I would ask you purposefully to notice, feel, and share. And that will help to kind of turn the volume up a little more on the skill.
Chris, I also wonder with that, if adding in some things, like whether it's some soft instrumental music that you really love, or a smell like, a candle or essential oil, but something that that is going to already get you in kind of that enjoyment mode while you're focusing on the appreciation could help jumpstart it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Get in some of our exercises, we actually have people use their different senses. So that's you're right on. Just helping people, what sounds are peaceful, joyful, what smells, what sights, and so forth. So just, yeah, anything that's restful and peaceful and hopeful would be good for you.
Awesome. We have a really sweet comment. Just thank you for having this today. It was exactly what I needed in a situation with my family where they're repetitively rehearsing the bad stuff until I'm completely sucked dry. So thank you. So you are very, very welcome.
Yeah.
Here's one. I'm very grateful for this teaching, which I train my clients to do. Many people find this very difficult these days. When in Canada, we're still on COVID lockdown. Many activities and memories have people and activities that I can no longer do or see. What do you recommend for people whose lives are very diminished, perhaps also older people who are physically challenged? And I kind of even wonder with this, Chris, I'm not trying to make it too complicated, but sometimes memories might trigger pain when there are things that we can't do now.
Yeah.
They just remind us of the fact that, oh yeah, I used to do that, but I can't do it. So it hurts to think about it.
You're exactly right. And, we are the world is in a very interesting time. And so, what I would do is I would definitely start the dialogue. I would, online groups between the journaling is good for me and Jesus, the online groups, connecting with other people, even if I have to use the phone or video call. In a sense, you're trying to maximize the good stuff. So thinking back, I would, your brain looks back to predict the future. So even if you reflect back, what are some of those favorite memories? What are those highlights? Share and then listen to what gets stirred up in them and their joy. And so the point would be to, again, find ways to remember it as much as you can. In a sense, when things get hard, like you almost have to use like a magnifying glass in a sense to try to look even deeper and to try to work a little harder, because we're right. Even sometimes thinking about the good stuff can bring up the pain. So we acknowledge it, we validate it, we want to quiet the feelings that come up with the pain, but then we want to go back to what is the good stuff focus, focus on the good stuff. What does it feel like? And even share that with Jesus, and noticing, well, Jesus, what do you think? What would you like me to know today? So yeah, it really does require more creativity, in many ways, more effort, just because of the limitations that we might have.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer, Chris. One of the questions is I'm still not clear on what the differences are between appreciation and practicing gratitude that we hear so much about now. Could you clarify on that point again?
Yeah. So appreciation is what I call packaged joy. So, appreciation is the act of remembering joy, remembering God's gifts, God's presence, God's joy, and the joyful moments I have in my life. Gratitude is being thankful. So gratitude is I'm thankful for these gifts. So I would say, if I was going to practice this with Jesus, I'd say, God, thank you. Thank you for the gift of this webinar that I could share some of what you've taught me and have fun with that. I'm very thankful for that opportunity. And then appreciation would be now as I'm reflecting back on the time with you. I'm reflecting back on the experience. That's appreciation. So appreciation is the experience, whereas gratitude is that thankfulness. So I'm thankful for God's gifts. Appreciation is actively remembering God's gifts. What was it like in that moment? What was happening? What were you thinking, feeling? All of that. And so we're kind of unpacking that. That's what allows your brain, in a sense, to remember it all over again, to relive it all over again. Gratitude is great. Let's do that. We should be the most thankful bunch around, but let's also actively open our appreciation files in the process. Good question. Important question.
Yeah. No, and it is important because, like this person was saying, we do hear so much about it. And so we're talking about a fuller experience when we dive into appreciation. So I think it's helpful to understand that. And we have a couple questions about how do I make appreciation a more permanent habit? And I know we're going to go into that a little bit at the event we have on the 11th, but how would you answer that if someone's wanting to feel more joy every day and having this be a habit?
Yeah. So if you want to make this a daily habit, what I would do a couple things. One, I would set alarms on my phone to remind me throughout the day to just pause and notice. Pause and notice. You know, what are some good things that's happened this morning that I can think about, remember, and even talk to God about. So I would set timers throughout my day. This can be just a few minutes. So, you know, Dr. Wilder um, likes to say that if we actively practice appreciation, you know, 3 times a day for short spans of time for 30 days, what happens is that trains you, basically resets your nervous system and calibrates it for joy and peace. So try your journal, start a journal, you know, make it a point with your friends to you know, ask them, hey, what were some highlights from your weekend? You know, what good things has been happening for you? Do you have any moments of joy this past week? Share it, talk about it, tell those stories, and then just pause and notice, how does it feel when you think about those things? And so, as Christy said, the dinner table, you know what, that's awesome. Do it at meals. It's even better because you're already going to have the meal. You might as well just add this in on your drive to work, and your quiet time with God, like whatever things you do, just tack on a few minutes of practicing appreciation very, very intentionally, and your brain will say, oh, this is just a part of what I do and who I am. It becomes
Mm,
natural that way.
that's great. Um, there were two questions I was going to try to put together. Um, so, can you share a good segue to use with someone who's stuck in repetitive rehearsing of the negative? I think we've all been around that, where someone is fully stuck. And I think tagging onto that, how does this work? How do these ideas work when circumstances are more difficult or traumatic than ordinary stress?
Yeah, good question. So here's what I recommend. Practice this on the good days so it'll be available on the hard days. If you don't practice this on the calm days, it's going to be really hard on the hard days. So practice as much as you can so that it will be there. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you have friends or prayer partners, people in your life that just understand you and maybe know your desires, you know what? Just say, hey, this is the time I really need some appreciation. Would you mind taking a few minutes with me? Let's pray. Let's talk about appreciation. So, you know, take those steps to practice as much as you can. And the byproduct of the lack of appreciation is when we get stuck in those thoughts that rob our joy. So if I'm with someone and they're stuck, your brain will just do what it's been trained to do, good, bad, or ugly, right? Your brain will just run on whatever cycles it's been trained to run on. So if I'm with someone who's stuck, I would sit there with them and again, validate. You say what you see, like, wow, this sounds awful. You've just had a miserable day. I would feel this way too if I were in your shoes. So tell me about it. So I would validate them. I see you. I hear you. This sounds terrible. Now they no longer feel alone, right? So once that's established, all right. So tell me, you know, the comfort step is, well, you know, is there anything good that's been going on? Is there anything that you can think of? Any times of joy that you've had the past week? Any special moments? Any moments that made you smile? And that's when then I would have them really, you know, take the time to go down that road. Well, what was it like? What did it feel? Tell me more. And I've done this with people when they feel utterly abandoned by God. They're angry, they're mad, they feel alone. The part of sitting so that they don't feel alone is crucial, right? That's the first step when our mind is just stuck in that kind of unhelpful rhythm. Helping people feel seen, heard, and understood. Now I'm ready to practice the next step, which would be, you know, where are some of God's gifts in the midst of this awful situation that I'm in? And then when we can start to go down that road, then that really sets us up to say, well, I wonder where God is in this mess. You know, that's the sequence I would go after we get that appreciation going. Well, I wonder what God would want you to know about where he is in all of this as you feel this way. So again, with practice, your brain will start to do this and want this and expect this and enjoy this. It just, in the beginning, it just takes some very purposeful practice so that it becomes just kind of part of how our brain works and how our relationships work. So that's what we're after, but we have to practice to get there.
I love what you said about that too, Chris, because one of the things that I was hoping would come up is that sometimes we can use appreciation to either invalidate how we or other people are feeling. Like it doesn't matter, just be thankful, be happy,
Yeah.
or to avoid challenging feelings that we have. And so we're not talking about invalidating, we're not talking about avoiding. And so you really hit on that we can't even really begin to go to appreciation unless we feel like someone's with us in the pain or in what we're going through. And so I think that's a really important piece that you hit on.
Yeah, it is. One of the greatest ways to mess this up would be try to get someone into appreciation before they're ready. That's where that validation sitting with people. Job's friends did a great job until they spoke, but they were with him, they were sitting with him for days, right? So again, how do we sit with people in pain without minimizing it, trying to fix the pain? The goal is not to fix anybody's pain. The goal is to help them feel connected and seen and heard and understood. And then when they're ready, we can practice the appreciation, but we have to start with connecting first.
Yeah. And I've had people in my life who the validation has made a big difference, but they weren't really able to go to the appreciation with me. But yet, because they've seen me modeling it so much, it started to catch. And so even if maybe they can't go with you to the appreciation, maybe they're so stuck, it's a little hard for them. If you're modeling a lifestyle of appreciation, if you're showing appreciation for them, I think those are also other ways that you can help affect and influence them in their journey.
Yes, that's right. That's well said.
So scripture has much appreciation to God. Are there scriptural examples of appreciation for people?
Yeah. So, and I think about my education was in the Old Testament and seeing, how the Old Testament helps to interpret the New Testament. And the feasts in the Old Testament are all rich in appreciation. Many of them were celebrations, they're based around agriculture, but these were celebrations where families and communities would come together. They would share stories, they would share God's stories, they would share God's gifts, they would get to celebrate God. I mean, they're, now some of them, like Yom Kippur, are a little heavier and somber. But even in the midst of that, there is embedded through these feasts is this gratitude for God's provision, God's sacrifice, God's presence. So if you actually look at scripture with this lens, you'll see it there. And what I like about how it is in the feast is these were yearly. I mean, these were just set times where we would come together. And if you think about even how the Sabbath was supposed to be, the Sabbath was where you take a pause from creating or working, and it's an opportunity to rest and to fellowship and to focus on God's word and God's presence. And again, you would share stories and you would think about God's gifts and God's presence in your life. And again, when you practice this and you look back for it, what happens is your brain expects it ahead. And so I love how God even set this up for Israel, because again, you practice this regularly. You hear God's stories and you see and you hear how God provided for the generations. They would have heard those stories and been raised on those stories. They would have expected it in the present and they would have anticipated it into the future. So, and you see this beautiful response when Jesus often shows up on the scene and somebody gets touched or healed. What are they feeling? One, they are gratitude, they're thankful for what Jesus did, but then they have a story they can tell as they relive that moment, which would be the appreciation. They're sharing the gift of what happened when they interacted with the Good Shepherd, and here's what changed and here's what happened. So again, there's a story there of here's what happened when I encountered the living God. And every time they tell that story, not only is it priming their listeners, it's keeping the memory alive in their brain, and they relive the moment every time they tell that story. So it's a very beautiful lens. It's there, and it's a very relational activity that, again, as we practice this becomes part of our character, part of how we do church, how we do community, and ultimately how we do life. So make it part of your time with God, but also make it part of your time of your worship and your time of fellowship with others. It's just the gift that'll keep on giving in our communities.
Awesome. We're going to take one more question, but first I want to mention two things. There's a ton of comments coming in, Chris, of just appreciation for you and for these free webinars. So just want to let you know how grateful people are. And there was a question about the foundational 5. So the foundational 5 skills are skill 0, which is our relational circuits, skill 1, which is joy, building joy in our lives, skill 2, which is quieting or learning to calm or soothe ourselves. Again, we have free webinars on all of those, and then more resources on skill 0, and then we will have more coming for skill 1 and 2. And then skill 4, which is appreciation, what we're talking about today. And then we're going to be diving into skill 13, right? Isn't it skill 13, Chris, which is God's sight, seeing things the way God sees them. And we're going to be getting into that in August. So wanted to, let you know what those are. And this is the question we have. How do you recommend handling teen daughters sharing a political podcast and such, which are triggering a fear and anger in me? I have a daughter who is very into those things as well.
Yeah, well, let's look at this. There's always a story of even my preferences, my passions. There's a story. So if it's something the daughter's, passionate about, what is it in her that's getting sparked here? What is the story? And how does this tie with who God made her to be? So if something's really important to her, what is it that God has put in you that's really starting to show here? So you're learning. This is part of what Christy just mentioned, seeing some of what God sees. So what is the story? How can I validate who she is and what's important to her? But maybe there's better ways to express it. So teens are very interested in truth, power, and relationships. And so they need adults who can help guide them with truth, power, and relationships, because our brain is wired for this stuff. We just have to know, how do I navigate this? How do I guide this process? So there might be something there that truth is showing up, or power, or relationships, but what is it saying? What's the story? And how can we highlight the values in our teens, and just maybe we can help them find better ways of expressing or finding whatever it is that they're looking for, or honor what the value is. And that's where, as parents or as family or as communities, we can help guide that process. But we have to first help them feel seen and understood before we get to anything else. That's the first step.
Yeah, I really love that, because there is something about how God is wired, all of us, that make us care a lot about the things we care about, even though it can trigger stress in us. But there is something about our wiring that's down in there to be mined out that's really beautiful. So I love that you hit on that, Chris. And I wanted to mention, someone was asking, yes, our past webinars are all available. You can go to thrivetoday.org, and if you go to online events, there's a free webinar on the drop down, and that has all of our webinars. Most of them are on YouTube as well. And you can also find the Foundational 5 webinars on the Foundational 5 page that I gave you. So if you registered, well, you all on here registered, so you'll get an email with the recording link and with the links to these things. And if you need extra help, you can reach us at info@thrivetoday.org, and we'd love to help direct you toward the resources that are best for you. So this has been just wonderful, Chris. I'm so thankful for you joining us and sharing your wisdom with us. And we hope to see many of you out at our appreciation event on June 11th. This is just such a great way to dig deeper into these things. And Anything you want to say before we take off, Chris?
I just want to say thank you, Christy, for just guiding us so well and faithfully and joyfully. Thank you for all that you do. We really appreciate you. And as well, friends, I just reiterate, thank you. What's exciting for us at Thrive Today is you are, God's people that's going to go and share this good stuff with the world. So we love you. We're proud of you and glad that you found this helpful.
Absolutely. Hope you have a wonderful day. And we look forward to seeing you at another Thrive Today event in the future. Bye-bye.